Welcome to Plug In, OREMC's podcast about our co-op, our community, and our shared connections. I'm Michele Hutchins, your Communications and Marketing Coordinator. And joining me today on this edition of Plugged In is Tina Mobley, our OREMC Foundation Trustee from Baker County. Thanks for being here.
You're more than welcome.
And also joining us today is Sherrie Steadman, the Program Coordinator with Isaiah 117 House. So, ladies, thank you very much for coming here today. I think this conversation is going to be very eye-opening to our listeners.
I do believe so also.
So today we are talking about foster care, not the whole realm or continuum of foster care, but a portion of it, largely the beginning stages of when a child is taken from their home and waiting a foster care placement. But to just kind of set the stage a little bit, and I think we meaning the foundation, Tina, really started to become aware of the needs in the foster care community, for lack of a better word, as you, the foundation trustees, received several grant requests over the past year from various organizations. And I think we all had our eyes opened as to the breadth and depth of the foster care system and some of its challenges, shall we say. So just to give a little context, I did a little research on a couple of numbers. The latest numbers I found for 2022 is that the state of Florida has about 22,000 children in the foster care system, and Georgia has about half that, 11,000. Then on top of that, you need foster care families. Well, out of those 22,000 children, there are only about 9,000 licensed foster care families in Florida and 4,700 licensed foster care families in Georgia. So there's a huge demand. Absolutely. And not enough support, shall we say, to meet that demand. So that kind of lays the landscape of kind of what we're dealing with this discussion. And while we're not delving into the whole continuum of care, we're talking about that very traumatizing first hours, days, weeks of care. And so I think at that point, Sherrie, I'd like you to tell us what is Isaiah 117 House? Can you clue us in a little bit?
Absolutely. So the Isaiah 117 House was created because of those first hours and moments of removal. So we created a home where we can reduce that trauma on removal day. A lot of times what's happening is there's not enough foster homes. You heard the statistics. And because there's not a lot of foster homes, a lot of these caseworkers, when they remove these children from their homes, they're having to go back to the office with the caseworker while the caseworker tries to find a placement for them, whether that be a foster family or whether that be a relative placement. And these children are spending hours upon hours in a caseworker's office where there's a caseworker who's overworked, underappreciated, piles of paperwork, making phone call after phone call, trying to find a home for these kids. And an office is no place for children. So we realized there was a gap there that needed to be met. And the Isaiah 117 House was created. And that house is created so that those children no longer go to a caseworker's office, but they will come to a home where they're going to be lavishly loved on. They're going to have everything that they need, brand new clothes, a hot, warm meal. If they need a bubble bath, they'll have a bubble bath, and a safe place to sleep. And they'll be met with a group of volunteers that just lavishly love on those children, as well as that caseworker. So our goal is just to kind of come aside that caseworker and really support them and lighten their load while they find the right home for that child to go to.
Now, the home for Baker County, you want to talk a little bit about where it's being constructed? Because I know you've broken ground on it, correct?
Yes, we broke ground in September, and we are in the construction phase. We are waiting on permits and the lovely engineering permits and trust permits, but we are beginning to see progress in that. And so we should start moving some ground this month possibly, and next month we should start having a structure go up. So we're super excited about that.
Now, this house in Baker County is by no means the first one. This program actually has some roots. The original one up in Tennessee, and Tina, you brought this to the trustees' attention, the foundation, back in August. We had, as I said earlier, I think that particular third quarter meeting, you had several grant requests to review relative to foster care. And you talked to us about that this might be coming here, and that you had a video someone had shared. It was Mike Rowe, and of course, many of us know Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs, but in this case, it's a program he has called Paying It Forward.
Right.
You shared that video with me, which I subsequently we shared. So I think about, wow, that was August, and look where we are in early 2023. So talk a little first, I guess, Sherrie, about, yes, this is Isaiah 117 in Baker County, but give us the roots of this organization.
Absolutely. So our founders, Corey and Rhonda Paulson, they're from Elizabethton, Tennessee. And Rhonda just felt a calling that she had always wanted to adopt. Corey did not want to adopt, but she kind of tricked him. It's always a joke that she kind of tricked him into going on a date one night. And their date ended up at a fostering class. And so they took these fostering classes, and they took the 8-week courses. Well, in the midst of that 8-week course, one of the things that they did is take a field trip to their local, what we call the Department of Children and Family Services here.
Okay.
And while they were in that meeting, in that conference room, the caseworker said, "We had a little girl that slept here on the floor last night." And Rhonda said she specifically remembers thinking, "What do you mean they slept here on this floor in this conference room?"
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Yeah, a little girl laid right here on this floor last night because there was nowhere else for her to go." And Rhonda said that God spoke to her and said, "These are my children. What are you going to do?"
Mm-hmm.
And so they finished their foster courses, and they became foster parents. And the first little boy that she received a call for was a fiery red-headed little boy, and his name was Isaiah. And they took Isaiah into their home, and eventually they adopted Isaiah. But that's kind of where this was birthed out of, was their first experience with their first foster child. And so the desire to do something and to change the system and to see no child in a caseworker's office again is kind of where this was birthed from. And God just began to grow it, and it has just flourished from there. And they have numerous homes open in Tennessee, more homes being open in Tennessee, and we are in several states now. And hopefully our home will be the first one in Florida. And so we're super excited about it.
So when you brought this to the trustees and to my attention and a couple other, Dewey and Elizabeth in the office back in August, it was, at what point do we suggest to Isaiah 117 that they make an application? But then it was merely, my understanding of it, hey, something's thinking about coming. You got to check this out.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about what you've seen happen around the Isaiah 117 house coming to Baker County.
I think I've seen community involvement because
Yes.
we were just talking, coming here, and Sherrie had mentioned contagious.
Mhm.
And whenever you have the opportunity to hear Sherrie speak, she said she was praying for what was God's word for her for the 2023, and God laid it on her heart, contagious. And you cannot help but feel the passion, and she makes this contagious of the wanting to get involved. And I had even mentioned at the Nahunta meeting last week, it was like, we all live in our bubble, and we do not realize, because I've never had a friend, I've never had a family member who's had to be part of a foster system. We've never had, a family member that's been displaced because of a situation. And I think when you start hearing, it's like, this is happening. And we have to look outside of our bubble. We have to look outside of our bubble and realize of what the foster system is all about, and what do these children have to live through on the day of displacement. And so going back to your question was, I think through her contagious passion that she has for Isaiah House, it has brought our county, it's not just a particular church that's involved in it. This is a county-wide, an eye-opener for our county of basically saying, this is what's happening to our children in our county and our surrounding areas. What are we going to do about it?
That's right.
And so that's basically, whenever I see Sherrie, she's like, this is what happens. And I think it's a knowledge of saying, let me tell you what happens on the displacement days because of the children. We're all concerned about the parents that the children were taken from, but what happens to the children?
Yeah.
And so that's our biggest concern, is being that support system for that child.
That's right.
And so with the county, it has just been
Amazing.
It's been amazing.
Overwhelming.
And we've seen a county that has come together, and it's not just a particular church. It is with multiple churches. It's with the county-wide, you go from the sheriff's office to getting the sheriff's office involved and it's just been a unity and an eye-opener of saying, what can our county do about this? And so that's what we've seen is a contagious passion that she has stemmed through our county.
So, Tina, from what you've described at the meetings and what you've just described, and from what I saw with the initial building of the very first Isaiah 117 house through that video that you shared with us back 6 months ago now, was grassroots. I mean, it was with the very first one and appears to be the approach with the one here in Baker County, a very grassroots effort, educating the community. You've had some dinners. I've read things about lemonade stands. They talked about that. Rhonda talked about that when she was interviewed in the video with Mike Rowe. And I think the other thing to note is, we're not talking that long ago. We're talking 2014. Am I correct? And when she first got involved with the foster care system, so in that time is the initial one in her hometown to several. So, Sherrie, talk to us a little bit about how you became aware of Isaiah 117 house and how you're involved in the foster care system in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. So me and my husband became foster parents about a little over 12 years ago, and we've had numerous children in our home since then. And one of the stories that I like to share is one of the placements that we received. It really paints a picture of what removal day looks like. Not only how it's traumatic for the child, traumatic for the parents, traumatic for the foster family, but it's also traumatic for that caseworker or that investigator who happens to be the one removing those kids from the home. So it was 2:00 in the morning, and I got a phone call asking if I would take in a 15-month-old baby boy. And I said, absolutely, yes, bring them on. And so about 4 a.m., a child protective investigator walks in the door holding the baby out in front of him with only a diaper on. The baby had been so traumatized in the car ride home and cried the entire time that he had thrown up all over the back seat of the car. And he only had a diaper. He didn't have any other belongings, no diaper bag, no nothing. The child protective investigator hands him over to me and asks if he could use our restroom so that he could clean up all of the throw up off of him. So I began to clean up the baby, and he comes back out and he says, I'll be back tomorrow. And my question was, do we have diapers? Do we have wipes? Do we have a bottle? Do we know if this baby has eaten? Do we know the baby's name? And the investigator said, I don't know anything. We just removed him by force with the sheriff's department, and we had to get him out of there. And so this baby came to me with nothing except the diaper on his body. And so it was traumatizing, and we rocked throughout the entire morning, and we cried, and we prayed, and we rocked, and we cried. And I don't know if I cried harder or if he cried harder.
The baby.
Right.
Yes.
And so the next morning, the child protective investigator came back, and he brought me a folder that has all the information that he could gather. And he said, I just wanted to let you know that yesterday was my first day on the job. He said, today was my last. I turned in my resignation. He said, this was so traumatizing for me. I can never do this again. And this was coming from a man who was a police investigator for years. And it was so traumatizing for him. So you can imagine how traumatizing it is for that child that's just lost everything that they've known. And they're now completely with a stranger that they don't know. And for the foster family, it's traumatizing because you're trying to love and take care of a child that you don't know how to meet their needs because you don't know what they need. I didn't know when the last time he ate. So that's kind of when things became more of a reality to me that something bigger needs to happen, and we have to help this time period of removal day. We've got to do something to reduce that trauma. So fast forward to my last placement that I had. I got him when he was 3 months old. And a part of our program that we started with our church was kind of a wraparound program to support foster families. I began trying to do an initiative where we could get more foster families in our community. And so one of the couple that goes to our church, an older couple, had decided, you know what, we'll support you and we'll keep your foster child for you while you work. And so one day I went to pick him up, and that afternoon His name is Mr. Jimmy and Miss Marty. Mr. Jimmy said, "Do you have 28 minutes? I just need 28 minutes of your time." And I said, "Absolutely." So I sat down on the couch and he began to show me that micro video. Micro had just started a new show called Returning the Favor, and it was a Facebook show. And he showed me this video with Rhonda Paulson, and I cried throughout this entire video. And I knew this is exactly what we needed for that removal day to reduce that trauma. And so I left there and I began making a video that I submitted to the Isaiah 117 house. And out of thousands of videos, they chose ours, and they chose Baker County to be the next place to get an Isaiah 117 house. And so that's kind of how that process started.
Oh, wow. And when
amazing.
was this?
This was in probably November of 2021.
Oh.
And then we officially got accepted, and we kicked off in Baker County of March of 2022.
Okay.
And so here we are, a little less than a year later, and we've broke ground and we're building a home. That's amazing.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And I mean, the story is just, heart-wrenching, but one in the vein that we've heard quite a bit about when we've made these check presentations to granting organizations seeking to support or provide wraparound, as you described it, foster care services. I mean, in several of our surrounding counties throughout our service territory, trauma-informed care, I know, is the initiative of one organization, because it doesn't just affect the child, the family, the foster family,
That's right.
and obviously the caseworker in this instance, but it does impact the entire community, because if they are lucky enough to stay in their home community, then there's an impact to schools and churches and friends.
Wow.
And it's even worse if they have to be moved outside.
That's right.
And as we talked about at the top of this, there's more need for foster care homes than there are homes available. And I know one of the other grants that was given was just Brantley County, Georgia. And in presenting them the grant, they were sharing their story. There are 86 kids in Brantley County and only 7 foster families. So where do these kids end up? Well, just, whether it's Georgia, Florida, or anywhere else, they end up where they can find a placement, and it could be miles and hours
That's right.
from their home. So it's not just, that trauma just continues.
It does.
And that uncertainty continues. And, I think it took me a minute. And so when you shared that video for me to watch, to fully understand what I was watching and understanding, these are just kids waiting to be someplace, but the love and the care and the normalcy, that's what I guess I had to kind of reconcile. They're really trying to create a normal environment until such time that they're assigned a family.
Right.
Why not have a loving home that you come to where you're just lavishly loved, so that you're comfortable? And our goal is for an Isaiah 117 house is to let them know this is happening to you, not because of you, and you're not alone. And, we're here with you, and we love you, and you are loved. And it's just to reduce that all the way. And we have testimony after testimony that comes from our open homes all across Tennessee that the children are just being changed, and the trajectory for their life is being changed because of that initial removal day. Things could be so much worse years down the road, but we're already getting testimonies back from teenagers that tell us, if it hadn't been for that Isaiah house, I would have took a different path.
And again, this all started with an experience in 2014, and however many houses there are at this point. I mean, that's a lot of positive outcome in a very short amount of time.
It is.
So I know when you brought this to the trustees' attention back in August, and you were describing how it was just getting going, and at what point should you suggest that they make an application? Tell me a little bit about your conversation you had with Sherrie about the OREMC Foundation, and what you said to her about how it might be a possibility to get some help
Right.
there.
Well, to take you back and to create the where I was at the moment whenever this was first actually mentioned to me, I had already sat through 2 different meetings, I believe it was, with the Okefenokee Foundation, and laying the foundation of the program.
Right.
And so I just had instilled in my mind, it was like, listen, we're from Baker County. How many 501c3 programs do we have that could be eligible to apply for this? And so in the back of my mind, I just kept thinking about 501c3. And so I was actually standing in the Firehouse restaurant in McClenny and standing there by myself waiting to receive my order. And Sherrie walks in. And when Sherrie walks in, she just has that kind of different look on her face. And she said, I just left a meeting that your name was mentioned in this meeting. And she says, and here I walk in and I see you. So she said, do you have just a moment that we could step to the side? And I said, sure. So Sherrie started explaining to me what the Isaiah House was all about. And so as I'm standing there, the whole time I'm thinking, surely would this program be eligible to apply for an application, an application for the foundation? And so, of course, she was contagious, and she took me hook, line, and sinker. She had me drawn in. And so as we're standing there talking, and whenever she finally took a breath okay, and I was like, Sherrie, the only thing I have to ask you is, could this possibly be a 501c3 program organization? And she said, yes, it is. Why? And I was like, because God just made our paths cross. Because here I am just on the initial part of the foundation with Okefenokee being created. And now you're coming up to me, explaining to me the need for the Isaiah House. And so I'm like, so all I can say is, if this is a 501c3, me and you need to talk very soon because I need to get you on board. And I think that's because the entire time I was like, look how God has actually placed us in the right position at the right time.
Yeah.
And so that's how it stemmed. That's how it stemmed from Okefenokee getting involved with the Isaiah House. And it's taken some time. If we base our lives on our timetable,
Right.
We would want everything instantly. But look how long it's taken this month to be fulfilled. And so
Absolutely.
we're all working on God's timetable.
That's right.
So,
Well, and we have said at the Isaiah House from the very beginning, it's not our time, it's God's time.
Right.
And we won't go ahead of Isaiah House's time frame, and we will not go ahead of God's time frame.
right.
And so he has blowed our socks off by providing everything he's provided within that last year, and just shown us that, you know what, this house is a community's house. The community is building this house for his children that he's never forgotten. And so this is a community-wide effort, and it takes businesses and it takes people who know about grants and corporations that want to get involved. That's what will lead this house, and that's what will be the life of this house, is the community coming together to make it happen.
So tell us a little bit more about the house itself. How many, beds, size, rooms, services. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So our home is approximately a 2,600 square foot home. We will have a living room, a kitchen, a full dining room, a play area. We have 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and we have also an office that has rounded windows for the caseworkers to be able to work from so that they still have eyes on the kids at all times. So when children come into our home, we greet them in our red door. They are our red door guests. And like I said before, we lavishly love on those kids, and we lavishly love on that caseworker. So we want to lighten that load for that caseworker, and we want to love on them by providing them, what's your favorite coffee? We know you haven't eaten today. Let us get you some food while we feed the children. We want to just allow that caseworker to be able to focus on what they need to without having to be hands-on with the children. And so our home provides that ability to just give them a comfortable, loving environment to be able to do that in, but at the same time, love on that caseworker and lighten their load so that they can find the right home. Because we're all about reducing trauma, and so we want to find that right placement that child doesn't have to be removed from there again and the trauma start all over.
Sure.
So that's what our home is about. It's a beautiful, loving home that's bright colors that any child would love to come into. Our whole upstairs, we have a giving room. That's where all of our donations go. So in that upstairs, we have everything that a child could need from a preemie all the way to an 18-year-old. So we will have clothing, shoes, bath products, backpacks, school supplies, toys. So when a child comes in and they're scared, the first thing we can do is say, what would make you feel better? Would it be a favorite blankie? You didn't get to bring your blankie with you. Let's go upstairs and let's shop for a new blankie. Would you like a stuffed animal? They can go pick out whatever makes their day better because nothing is off limits. Everything is not ours, it's God's. And so we give whatever they need to make that day better. And I always like to share the story that, if a child comes in and they're hungry and they want a bowl of mac and cheese, and then they want a second bowl of mac and cheese, they can have 5 bowls of mac and cheese. Now, their tummy might hurt when they're done, but we're not going to tell them no on that day. That's the worst day of their life because we want it to be the best day of their life. And so we're going to use all of those resources to make that day better for those children.
What is a typical length of stay for a child in the transition home?
So our goal is 72 hours or less.
Okay.
That's just to allow that placement to be the right placement to be found. I know that the department and the state has a goal to get children placed as quick as possible. So a lot of times children are there for a very short stay. Could be hours. But if they need to be there for longer, then we're available for that.
So how many kids could you house at any one time once it's complete?
That's a great question. It's all going to be case by case, and it will all be based on what that caseworker says. If those children that come into our home have been subjected to something that we don't want to subject other children to, then we may not be able to open our home to more than the couple of children at a time.
I see.
So it's case by case, and caseworker to caseworker will have to discuss if the children can be in the home at the same time. We may not have small children in the home when we have teenagers.
I gotcha.
So it's really a case by case.
So it's kind of a constant change, a constant flow.
Constant. Yes.
You mentioned a red door, and you stressed a red door. So what's significant about a red door?
So when Rhonda Paulson first started this journey, God gave her a white house with a black roof and a red door. She did not know why, but that's just what she envisioned, and that's what he gave her. And the very first home that they purchased that became their very first Isaiah house happened to be a white house with a black roof and a red door.
I see.
And so we focus on that red door. We talk about red door culture. If you do some research and you look all over the country, red door culture is a thing. Churches will often have their doors painted red because it's significant to welcoming people and refuge. A place of refuge. Other countries paint their red door for other meanings and other purposes, but the red door culture is a real thing. One of the things that I find that I love is, we've always heard in the Bible that you painted red blood, the blood of the Lamb, over your doorstep to protect your family and your children, and that's part of that red door culture. So our culture is, they are our red door guests, and when they walk through, they feel nothing but love. And they get lavishly loved. So we just stick with that red door culture, but it's just all something that God revealed to her in the very beginning.
All this, as we said, is at a child's sort of entry into the foster care system, part of the most traumatic portion of that continuum of care. And we've talked a little bit about some of the needs and what's not available. We've talked about that there's lots of various organizations and agencies that try to support this with as wraparound services from different angles and perspectives. I mean, what do people not know about the foster care system that they need to know?
I would say the main thing that people don't know is that this was never the state's job. This was always the church's job. And time again, if you read through the Bible, it's the church's job to take care of the widows and orphans. And that's where the Isaiah 117 comes in.
I gotcha.
Do good, seek justice, take care of the widows and orphans. And so it was never their job to do. It's our job to step up and take care of these children. And we've touched on the lack of foster families. And I tell people all the time, if you don't know, you don't know. But once you do know, you can't turn a blind eye to it. Not everybody's called to be a foster parent, but we're all called to do something. And so if something looks like praying for the Isaiah house at 117 every day because we set our alarms, then you're doing something. If it means you're becoming a monthly partner and a donor, you're doing something. Or if you feel like you're called to be a foster family, you're doing something. But the foster system is real. It's happening to the children in your community. It's happening to your neighbors next door, but you just don't know. And that's not your fault. But once you do, you have to do something about it.
So relative to your house in Baker County, I mean, obviously there's been that grassroots effort to raise awareness, to create community, to build together, to find funds, to support initiatives. But there will be an ongoing need. So what are some of the, in addition to everything you've just said, what are things people can do to contribute to Isaiah House to help get you going both initially and then on an ongoing basis?
Our biggest ongoing basis is going to be our monthly donors. That's what's going to keep the life of this house running is our monthly partners. We have a program that we call our sock buddies, that anytime anyone becomes a monthly donor, they get a pair of Isaiah House socks. And so that's just something that we like to do. But at any time, we have to keep those donations coming in. So right now I have churches and schools and organizations that are loading us up with socks. We had a school that gave us over 700 pairs of socks. They did a sock drive.
Wow.
The same school just did a blanket drive, and we'll be receiving a whole huge box full of blankets. Those kind of things where you can do a drive at any time, diapers and wipes, clothing, all of those are reoccurring needs that we have to have in that home in order to provide for these children. So anybody can provide those things at any time. I like to share with people, if you think about how often you go through a fast food restaurant, and nowadays, just for my family of 5, it's $60 going through Burger King. But if you could just put aside one fast food meal, and when you go to the grocery store, pick up a couple of packs of diapers, and each time you run in, it makes a huge difference in the life of an Isaiah house. And so when you have the entire community coming together and thinking that same way and providing, we'll never need for anything. All of those needs will be met.
Wow. I mean, wow.
No.
There's not much else to say. But it's not just young children and young, it's not just babies and young children. It is
Right.
teens as well.
Yes.
So I assume any gift for any age child is welcome.
Yes. Teenagers, we see a lot of teenagers. Obviously, we don't have open house right now, but we just recently have been able to serve teenagers. I get calls from a caseworker who I'm close to that serves a lot of teenagers in our area, surrounding counties. And so we were just able to do bags for teens so that when that caseworker picks these teens up, a lot of times they come with nothing as well. Or if they've been at a facility, that facility doesn't release their belongings, and so they only come with the clothes on their back. So we were able to just do bags for these teens that has hair products and, underwear, socks, everything that a teenager could need. And so that initially will get them what they need. But the goal that I have right now, even before our house opens, is to partner with caseworkers that just call me and tell me, what do you need for a child? And then we'll go pull out of our storage whatever we have. And if we don't have it, we'll get it. And that's just the goal, is to make sure that these kids are taken care of. But yeah, from preemie all the way to 18 years old, everything you can think of. A lot of times people don't think of things like deodorant. Or we have a plethora right now of toothbrush and toothpaste, and that's great. But these teenagers want shampoo and conditioner and hairspray and makeup. What teenage girl wouldn't love to have new makeup when she has nothing because she's been removed and she's lost everything she's known?
Yeah.
So any product you can think of that you would have in your home, we need in the Isaiah house.
Gotcha. So where can people learn more and get in contact with you to be able to do these things?
So we have a local Facebook page that is Isaiah 117 House, Baker County, Florida.
Okay.
They can look that up. We also, I would like to mention, Duval County is in the process of also having the Isaiah 117 House.
Okay.
So they have their Facebook page that's the same, Isaiah 117 House, Duval County.
Yep.
But you can go to the Isaiah117house.com website.
Okay.
And at any time you can choose a location there, or you can support just overall at that website. We have links that are on our Facebook pages, that there's a link tree there that you can go and give or become a monthly supporter, or you can become a volunteer. We have to have 35 trained volunteers
Okay.
before we ever can open our doors.
Because you're open 24 hours a day.
That's right. Anytime a caseworker calls, we're there to serve them. And so we have to have those 35 volunteers at least that are willing to drop whatever you have to do, because that moment is when you're needed. And you go to that house and you serve those kids and you serve that worker. So there's so many ways that people can get involved. And if somebody's watching this that your community needs an Isaiah 117 house, reach out to me, talk to me, because the more houses we have, the more children we serve, and we do it together because we're all one big family.
Well, I don't think I could have said that any better. Tina, really, you brought this to our attention, both as a co-op and as a foundation. Any last words or thoughts from you on how far we've come?
Well, I think it all goes back to God's timing, because it was mentioned, and then as we see the applications come through for the foundation, And all these applications are requesting diapers and wipes, and
Yeah.
we need to store these, so that they can be given out to the needy. And I think you kind of look back at it and just say, in God's timing, that it really did. It's taken months now, but finally we fulfilled the need. And that's what that's what I was excited to say, is like, I really would like to see Okefenokee Rural Electric be on the bandwagon with this, with the entire Baker County community. And so that's what was successful at.
Well, thank you all for listening and watching. It certainly has been an eye-opening conversation, and those resources, both Facebook and the web address, are at the bottom of your screens. And you can go back and listen to it. But Facebook, Isaiah House 117, Baker County or Duval County on Facebook, and then IsaiahHouse117.com.
That's right.
For our website. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.